There's a man named Robert. He's in the Walmart right now, in the hardware section. He's buying a box of zip ties and a replacement switch for a light fixture. He's wearing New Balance sneakers with a small tear near the left toe. His jacket is a Columbia fleece from 5 years ago. There's nothing remarkable about him. The cashier who rings him up is pleasant, makes small talk, doesn't think twice. What she doesn't know. She doesn't know that the strip mall this Walmart anchors, the entire property, generates $31,000 a month in lease income. She doesn't know the self-service car wash 2 blocks over, the one with the faded sign and the slightly sticky buttons, belongs to a holding company 2 layers deep that traces back to Robert. She doesn't know the parking structure behind the Walmart, the one employees use, sends Robert a deposit on the first of every month without a single phone call required. She doesn't know that on a Wednesday morning 6 months ago, Robert read a quarterly portfolio summary on his phone while waiting at the DMV, looked at a number that had 11 digits in it, put his phone back in his pocket, went to the window, and renewed his driver's license. That's it. That's the whole reaction. Today I want to show you the actual mechanics of how money like that gets built, because the real version looks nothing like what you've been shown. This is not a video about getting rich fast. I want to put that on the table immediately. If you came here looking for the one move, the one asset class, the one moment of genius that changed everything, this isn't that video, and I'm genuinely not sorry about it. What I'm going to walk you through is the actual framework behind quiet, compounding operational wealth. The kind that generates income from 30 different directions simultaneously while you're buying zip ties at Walmart. Here's what we're covering. First, why boring businesses are structurally superior to exciting ones, and how that counterintuitive fact explains almost everything. Second, the exact acquisition path Robert used step by step from $22,000 to 9 figures. And third, the personal cost of the structure. Because nobody talks about that part, and it's the part that actually matters most. Stay until the end. The third section is the one that will stay with you. This is the real thing, not a highlight reel. Robert was 27 years old. He was a regional sales rep for a commercial equipment distributor. $51,000 a year, company car, modest apartment. He was not unhappy. He was not particularly restless. He was just moving through his life. On a Saturday in February, he pulled into a self-service car wash, the coin-operated kind, the ones that look like they were designed in 1991 and have not been reconsidered since. He put in $4 in quarters. The machine gave him 2 minutes and 50 seconds instead of the posted 4 minutes. He didn't complain. There was no one to complain to. He drove home with soap residue still on the rear bumper, but sitting in his car in his apartment parking lot, he kept thinking about one thing. Who owns that machine? Not who services it, not who built it, not who collected the quarters last Tuesday. Who owns it? Where do they live? What does their Tuesday look like? The question you can't put down is the one worth following. He spent 4 hours that night on his laptop. He wasn't looking for a business plan. He didn't have a vision board. He wasn't listening to a podcast that told him to take action. He just had a question. And here's what he found. A single self-service car wash bay in a well-located market generates between $3,500 and $9,000 per year in gross revenue. That range sounds wide. It isn't once you understand what drives it. An 8-bay facility at median performance, not great, not exceptional, just median, is doing somewhere between $28,000 and $55,000 a year in revenue, with one part-time person doing maintenance and collection 3 days a week. The equipment has a useful lifespan of 18 to 22 years. The business model has not changed materially in 40 years. Nobody is writing a think piece about it. Nobody is keynoting a conference about disrupting the self-service car wash industry. Nobody cares. That was the thing that stopped Robert completely. Not the margins, not the operational simplicity, the invisibility. Let me tell you something about boring businesses that almost nobody says out loud, but that explains an enormous amount once you really sit with it. Glamorous industries attract talent and capital like nothing else. The more culturally exciting something is, the more smart, well-funded people flood into it, which means the competition is brutal, which means margins compress, which means you need to be genuinely exceptional just to survive. Now look at what happens in a boring industry. Nobody quit their investment banking job to buy a chain of self-service car washes. Nobody is at a startup accelerator pitching their vision for disrupting coin-operated laundry. Nobody posts about their vending route on LinkedIn and gets 1,000 likes. The boring businesses don't attract that kind of competition. Not because they lack financial merit, but because they require patience, operational consistency, and a genuine comfort with being unglamorous. Three traits that are almost impossible to make viral. That's the moat. Not a patent, not a network effect, not proprietary technology. Just the structural fact that most people will not do the boring thing long enough to learn it completely. Robert understood this at the end of that 4-hour Saturday night, sitting at his kitchen table with a half-empty glass of water and a legal pad full of car wash revenue math. He didn't tell anyone. He went to bed. He set his alarm for 6 a.m. He started making calls the next morning. 8 months after the car wash Saturday, Robert made his first move. It was not a car wash. He had learned enough by then to know that entry cost mattered and that he needed a smaller first step, something he could own completely and understand from the inside before scaling anything. He found a man selling a vending route, 14 machines, placed in small office buildings and one regional hospital. The seller was 61 and tired of the collection rounds. The equipment was dated but operational. Purchase price $22,000. Robert had $26,400 in savings. He paid cash. He kept his day job. First month net income, after every cost, collection time, and maintenance, $890. He told no one. It felt too small to mention. And here's the truth. By the time it stopped being small, silence had already become the entire operating structure. Not by design, by habit, and then by necessity. By month 10, he'd added 8 more machines through a second retiring operator who sold at a fair price because Robert arrived fast, certain, and with no contingencies. Speed plus certainty equals motivated seller's first call. By month 17, he sold the combined route at a significant premium and used the proceeds as a down payment on his first car wash facility. Then a second car wash. Then a coin laundromat, bought from a 64-year-old woman named Gloria, who sat across from him in a diner and said the thing that sellers almost always eventually say, "I just need to know whoever takes it will actually take care of it." Robert said he would. The deal closed in 11 days. Then a distressed commercial strip, purchased below replacement value from a regional bank that needed a non-performing asset removed from their books. Not because Robert was taking advantage of anyone, but because motivated sellers measure value differently than patient buyers. Speed and certainty were worth the gap in price. Robert had become fast and certain in a way that was genuinely uncommon. Then self-storage. Then parking structures in 2 secondary markets. Then cell tower ground leases assembled over 13 months through 3 separate brokers. None of them seeing the complete picture until it was already closed, already performing, already generating income. Every single step happened slowly, deliberately, without announcement. Not one of these businesses has an Instagram account. Not one has ever been mentioned when someone asks what Robert does for work. Here's the part I promised you, the part nobody puts in the video. The low profile isn't a tactic. It isn't a clever strategy Robert read about and decided to implement. It became structurally necessary. And here's what I mean by that. The moment someone truly knows what you've built, not suspects, not guesses from the car you drive or the watch you don't wear, but genuinely knows, something happens in their face that doesn't go back. You've seen it. You know the look. A recalibration. They're still making eye contact, but their focus has shifted. They're now looking at a door they didn't know existed. They're working out what it means for them. Whether you'll notice them noticing, they don't mean anything by it. The relationship just has a new room in it now. And every conversation from that point carries that room, even when it goes completely unmentioned. So you build a life that doesn't advertise itself. Robert drives a 2018 Ford F-150. White, high mileage. A small rust spot above the rear wheel, well, he has deliberately not addressed. He's been offered better vehicles as part of business deals 11 separate times. He's declined every one. A vehicle that looks like a working truck says nothing. That's the point. At a dinner 2 years ago, a man with an expensive watch asked what Robert did. Robert said property management. The man's attention was already moving before Robert finished the sentence. Robert spent the next 20 minutes asking the man about himself, the easiest conversation on earth, and learned that he managed other people's capital with a great deal of confidence and fairly unremarkable returns. Robert drove home. That was a good night. Here's something about boring businesses that doesn't get said clearly enough. These businesses have no emotional stake in your enthusiasm. A self-storage facility in a mid-sized market doesn't care whether you believe in it. It doesn't need culture. It doesn't need you to evangelize about it at dinner parties. It doesn't need a founder story. It needs maintenance schedules followed consistently. It needs someone handling operations who is competent and stable. It needs the kind of unglamorous institutional discipline that is almost impossible to teach and completely irreplaceable in practice. That's it. Every Thursday, every Friday, every boring quarter, it generates income, while other people are chasing whatever is shining that month. Robert's accountant, a precise, unsentimental woman named Patricia, who has worked with him for 9 years and once described the portfolio as the least interesting collection of assets I've ever reviewed, meant that as a mild observation. Robert asked her to put it in the client file. She did not put it in the client file. That was the moment he understood he had found exactly the right person for the role. Robert has a close friend named Marcus, the kind of person who makes a room feel better just by being in it. Genuinely one of the best people Robert knows. Marcus runs a small landscaping operation, works harder than almost anyone in Robert's life, has real operational skill, has been running into the same ceiling for 4 years, not because of lack of ability, but because of limited access to capital and the kind of strategic framework that capital quietly teaches you over time. 3 years ago, Marcus came to Robert with a real opportunity, a small commercial property, a neighborhood Marcus understood completely. He'd worked it for 7 years. Motivated seller, right price. The kind of thing that doesn't come back around. He needed $70,000. He had $18,000. Robert did not write the check. That was not indifference. That was not coldness. I need you to understand that clearly. Robert had been down a version of that road before, with someone who had a real plan and the kind of conviction that makes you want to back it. The money was gone in 15 months, not from dishonesty, from unreadiness. The friendship eventually came back, but different, a permanent scar on it that neither of them has ever named directly. Here's what that experience had taught him. Handing someone capital doesn't transfer the capacity to deploy it. Resources without the underlying capability to manage them don't elevate anyone. They just scale whatever patterns are already operating. And when it goes wrong, the friendship is what covers the cost. What Robert did instead was give Marcus 6 Saturday mornings. They sat at Marcus's kitchen table and worked through the deal, the actual structure of it. Robert showed him how to read a rent roll properly, how to evaluate seller motivation and use it as leverage without exploiting anyone, how to approach a community development lender with a deal package that gets taken seriously, how to run exit scenarios before signing anything. He talked the way someone talks when they've read a lot of books on the subject, not the way someone talks when they do this every week. Marcus secured financing through a CDFI lender 7 weeks later. The deal closed. It's performing. He texted Robert, "Bro, I have no idea how you knew all that. You said you just read." Robert replied, "I read a lot." Marcus called 5 weeks after closing, said he'd run the exit scenarios 3 times before signing anything, said he'd never done that before in his life. Then he said, "I think I've been gambling this whole time. Like actually gambling. This is the first time I bought something I actually understood." That's the whole thing right there. The check would have accelerated the same ceiling. The framework was the actual gift. Robert is back at Walmart this morning. Same zip ties aisle, different zip ties. He pays, he leaves, he gets in the F-150. On his phone, there's a LinkedIn notification. A man named Gerald, 58, who has run a regional HVAC company in the Midwest for 16 years, and changed his headline 4 days ago to "Exploring What Comes Next." Robert pulls a small notebook from the center console. He writes Gerald's name at the top of a blank page. 3 questions underneath it. The beginning of a framework for a conversation he'll probably have in 3 weeks. Neutral location, coffee, not lunch. He'll let Gerald talk the first 40 minutes. That's what this actually looks like from the inside. Not a dramatic moment. Not something worth filming. Just a name in a notebook. 3 questions. A man in a white pickup truck in a Walmart parking lot, thinking about a boring business nobody has ever written a think piece about. 31 different boring businesses running today without a single call to him. The cashier who rang him up this morning doesn't know she works in his building. Doris at the laundromat doesn't know the parking lot she uses every Thursday morning generates income while she folds other people's fitted sheets. Nobody knows. And that's not a tragedy. That's the entire structure.